your nonstick pans may be the root of all evil. Welcome to the Women Rockin' Midlife Podcast, soulful wellness to elevate your second act. You deserve to deeply love every moment of your life, living your best life with pure joy, optimal health and abundance, with the energy, time, and inner peace to savor experiences with your loved ones and with yourself. Hi, I'm Jen Kunkel. Join me on this soulful journey to complete wellness in midlife and beyond. I watched the movie Dark Waters the other night, and oh my gosh, that opened up this huge can of worms for me. Seeing this movie reignited me into action around a worldview that I'm very passionate about. If you don't know, Dark Waters is a movie based on the true story of how the DuPont chemical company knowingly poisoned livestock, the environment, and people with the manufacture of its revolutionary Teflon products. Yep, your nonstick pans may be the root of all evil. And learning the depths of their deception and their evasion made my blood boil. Now, I'm on a mission, and you can be part of it. Not only will it benefit your overall well-being, it could also help mitigate menopause symptoms. What in the world does Teflon or nonstick pans have to do with menopause? Well, here's the deal. Chemicals are in your body too. And then the chemicals from the outside world interact with the chemicals in your body. The chemicals in your body, some of them are hormones. So you know that hormones have to do with menopause symptoms. So your endocrine system is the system in your body that produces, regulates all of your hormones. So it'll produce one hormone to lower another hormone, and all of this biochemical processes that go on in your body interact with each other. So when you're in menopause, those chemical processes in your body get disrupted because as you get older, your estrogen drops, and there's things you can do about it, and that's what we talk about, both mindset wise and in the physical world. So one of what we're talking about today has to do with the physical world, and it has to do with nonstick pans and the Teflon coatings and the chemicals that have been released by those, and the chemicals that still might be being released by those. And we're also going to talk about the government stance on it, the company's stances on it. Like if you go looking for Teflon pans, or if you go looking for nonstick pans right now, because here's the thing. I got rid of all of my Teflon decades ago, and I switched initially to hard anodized. And they were kind of expensive pans, but they didn't have any kind of coating on it. I could use metal utensils. It was great. And then I went camping one time, and I discovered that I really loved cast iron. So when we went camping, I was using a propane stove, and propane's hotter. So I used this cast iron because the camping pans that I got initially, like on my first camping trip, oh my gosh, they were horrible to use with propane. They weren't heavy. So I was like, okay, let me get a cast iron pan and I'll just deal with that for camping. Because I had always heard they were so difficult to use and so difficult to clean. And guess what? It's not true. That was bogus information. I was really bummed because I spent so much money on these hard anodized pans, and I realized I didn't need to. I could have just bought these inexpensive cast iron pans and been super happy with them. So anyway, I use stainless steel pans, I use cast iron pans, and we're going to be trying out some carbon steel. So back to some of the data that I found. So I already knew, decades ago, like Teflon, nonstick, that could be dangerous. They talked about if it scrapes off or as it wears down, or it could be off-gassing. So maybe you know about that, maybe you don't. A lot of people don't. A lot of people just think, hey, since it's out there, it must be safe, right? Because aren't there agencies to make rules to protect us against that stuff? Yeah, I mean, there are. But here's the thing about that. Those agencies often have a revolving door back into industry. So it's not really in their best interest to put a lot of rules and regulations on this sort of thing. And I'm not big on rules and regulations. My the way I'd like the world to work is that people are just moral and ethical, and they don't put money over people's safety and well-being. Unfortunately, that's not the world that we live in, and that's very sad. It's a bummer. I think, especially when you're looking at these big corporations, they are legally obligated to the bottom line. Now, they're not supposed to be doing that at the expense of public safety or worker safety or the environment. And it would be a beautiful world if everyone would just do the right thing all the time without the rules and regulations. Wouldn't that be so much nicer? That's my Pollyanna idealistic viewpoint of how I'd love for the world to work. How do we make that happen? I don't know. That's a topic for deeper discussion for sure. But now we're in the system. We're dealing with the system that we're dealing with right now. Don't depend on the regulations. See, so we have these regulations and they don't even work because we can't necessarily trust the people who are making the regulations because they have it's a conflict of interest, really. So it's basically like these industries are regulating themselves, but are they? They're not. And that even comes up in this movie. Like there's a scene where the attorney is mentioning that because he's actually an attorney for other chemical companies. And DuPont happened to have in-house counsel instead of using outside counsel. Otherwise, this guy probably would have never been able to take this case. They were already on him about taking the case because because of their ties with the chemical industry in general. So it's really wild that this ever even came out, that this happened. But let's talk about how it will affect you and what you can do about it. Let's get to the nitty-gritty of why this matters. So, it does matter because of all the stuff that I talked about. That's just about me, my take, my stance, my worldview. Watch the movie. I mean, it's a great movie if you haven't seen it. And if you have seen it, but it was a long time ago, maybe check it out again because it's about 5 years old. So that's why I was saying, why did it take me so long to watch this movie? I love stuff like this, where it opens my eyes to something else going on. I mean, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, one more thing, seriously. But it's also good to know. And my mom has some nonstick pans that I said, hey, after I watched this movie, I said, please don't use these anymore. I almost got up and threw them all away. And I didn't. I just pushed them to the back of the cabinet. And we're trying some carbon steel, and she's kind of on board now. It's so interesting. So this is the other thing, the convenience. I get it. It's so convenient, and you have this mentality that I bought this off the shelf. How could it possibly be dangerous? But that's where you have to remember that there's not somebody looking out for you. You've got to look out for yourself. Some of us are looking out for you. I'm here talking to you about this now because I'm looking out for you. But I can't force you to do anything. I can't force you to stop using your nonstick pan. I can give you this information, and you can do with it what you will. And I did do a lot of research on the different kinds of pans, so you don't have to do that. And we might have a way to go more in depth, but stay tuned. All right, so I don't know about you, but I don't trust DuPont. I don't trust the EPA. As far as I'm concerned, they're all on the same side. Let's talk a little bit about your endocrine system again. So if you don't know, your endocrine system is a part of your biology, that your biological processes that creates your hormones, and they work together to balance each other, so that you have what you need of everything. So even like, say you're under stress, right? Your endocrine system kicks in and creates more cortisol. Now, you don't want to stay in this state for long terms. Now, most people think, why does that happen? Well, it happens for a reason that may have benefited us in the past, or it still could. Like, say someone's trying to rob you, your endocrine system kicks up the hormones that you need to focus all of your energy to getting out of that situation, like fleeing or whatever you need to do. So any kind of dangerous situation, vehicle accident, whatever happens, some kind of danger that you sense, maybe, your biology is protecting you. But when you are in those kind of states for too long, that's when it becomes hazardous. So that's the short version of it. And of course, when menopause occurs and you're getting older, your estrogen drops and different things, your hormones get out of whack and it affects you. So you've got to address that. But it's our lifestyle too that I believe makes this a lot worse. Things like using the nonstick pans. This is known to affect your endocrine system, the PFOAs. Now, you're going to look at ads for different pans. You're going to look at the specs and the details for different pans, and it's going to say PFOA free. And that's may be true. The pans are still made with a process that could be detrimental to the environment, first of all. And I don't believe we know what is really in the pans. I mean, they know, but I don't think we know what it's doing to our bodies. It's still called PTFEs. So back to the endocrine system. I keep diverging because there's so much information here. Okay. So there's data that suggests that PFCs can disrupt your endocrine system, and that further research on that is warranted. So we need further research, but we're still using these products. They haven't been proven to be safe. It's actually the opposite. There's data that says, hey, this looks like it might actually be disrupting the endocrine system. We need to look into this further. But meanwhile, let's just use them anyways. We'll see what happens. I don't like that approach. So the PFOAs, those are the ones that they're banned now. Okay, they're banned globally actually since 2020. But they're still in everybody. They're in 99% of the people, it's been found, because they're called forever chemicals and they never leave your body. So there's this study, it's called the C8 Health Project. Well, that's a bunch of studies, the C8 Health Project. And this is ongoing as a result of this DuPont situation. And that's what the PFOAs or C8, it's the same thing. Those are the chemicals that were linked to the problems that were found. If you don't watch the movie, let me give you the synopsis here. It was discovered that DuPont had documents in their corporate files that indicated that they actually knew that the Teflon process was causing problems within by the first year after they were doing it. They actually pulled women off the manufacturing line initially because of potential for birth defects. And there apparently were some cases with birth defects. They didn't keep the women off the line, although they didn't explain why. I don't think they changed anything. I think they just didn't want to call attention maybe. They were fighting this lawsuit for 20 years before it actually got resolved. So yeah, that's fun, right? That's just the short version of it to show you how evasive DuPont was about this whole thing. They were hiding it, then someone was on to them. They got caught, basically. And nothing really happened until this lawyer pushed for 20 years, to get stuff done. And all right, so back to this study about the endocrine system and the effect. So there's these also PFOSs. They're man-made surfactants, which were historically used in a variety of household products: food containers, clothing, furniture, carpets, paints, firefighting foam, and photographic emulsifiers. And so this study of this C8 has linked to early onset menopause and decline in fertility before age 32. So in this particular study, there was a cohort of 25,957 women, and there was an association between the perfluorocarbon exposure and decreased estradiol in early menopause in women over the age of 42. So the C8 is linked to issues with the endocrine system. Now, they're not using that anymore, or they're not supposed to be using that anymore. And these other chemicals that are used in the nonstick pans, I don't know how much they've been studied. I couldn't really find any information on that at this point. So one thing we know for sure is that products they were using, they're still using some of the other products. It's just this particular C8 PFOSs that they for sure linked to all of these problems. They're also linked to disease. There were, I believe it was six specific diseases. That it was a DuPont sponsored scientific panel. So let me say that again, DuPont sponsored. So the company itself sponsored this panel. So who knows if this is only scratching the surface. They found that C8 or PFOS exposure likely causes kidney cancer, testicular cancer, thyroid disease, ulcerative colitis, high cholesterol, and pregnancy-induced hypertension and preeclampsia. So thyroid disease. Thyroid is part of your endocrine system. So I know that affects that, but I mean, cancer, it can cause cancer, a couple different kinds at least. So this panel, remember, DuPont sponsored panel, also decided that 55 other diseases that were studied among the residents in the area were not linked to C8. Is that true? I don't know. It's DuPont sponsored. It's in their best interest to say, oh, it wasn't us. So that's hard to say. Like I said, I don't trust DuPont. I don't trust the chemical companies. I don't trust the government to be watching out for us. So now when you look up these pans, it's going to say PTFEs. And if you look up what is PTFE, because this is what I did, PTFEs are Teflon. So that's the nonstick surface. It's PTFE, and that's what they used before. The PFOAs were an additive. At least this is my understanding of how it works. All right. So I don't trust this company. I don't trust these companies to be looking out for our best interests. People want the nonstick pans for the convenience, so they want to sell them, and they want to sell them as non-toxic. But they didn't study whether these things are non-toxic. They just didn't get proven that they are. And that's kind of how things are done in the U.S. on a lot of things, on your makeup, the food ingredients, the chemical products. You might see posts around there on, hey, the EU has a different version of Trick cereal than the U.S. does. A lot of products. You know why? Because they have stricter requirements for ingredients. They have to be proven safe, whereas in the US, they can be used until they're proven not safe. So that's not a great way to go about it, if you ask me. Just keep in mind, who do you want to trust? DuPont was hiding this for decades. I think it was 30 years before anything even ever came up, and then another 20 years they fought it. They weren't willing to just go, wow, this is really causing a problem. We need to do something about it. They fought it tooth and nail. And they weren't looking out for us. So there are still hundreds of similar chemicals. In the movie, at the end of the movie, it said there were 600 chemicals that have not been studied, and they're unregulated. We're told they're safe, but we don't actually know that. And I don't believe it. Just my opinion. Here's a quote from the movie that just sums this all up. The system is rigged. They want us to think it will protect us, but that's a lie. We protect us. We do. Nobody else. Not the companies, not the scientists, not the government. Us. And that sums up my world view. So if you want to look into how to find better pans, get on my email list, because I'm going to be sending out some tips on that. I may even do a 2-hour masterclass or something like that, so that you can skip over doing all that research and digging around like I did, because it is very time consuming. I spent I spent a couple days or so digging really deep into the different pans that are available and what's safe, what's not safe. And I already know how to use the cast iron. I'm going to be trying out the carbon steel. They do require seasoning. They require a little bit of special care, but once you know how to use them, and I also realized that how you cook on these pans is going to make a big difference on how well they work or not. So if you want to do that, check into the description or the show notes and get my links. Get on my VIP insider list and you will get information on that. Once you're on my VIP insider list, you can actually message me directly and ask me questions. So feel free to do that.